Welcome to Long Live Baseball. We're back, baby. We got a great show for you today. We're going to wrap up the season. What does it mean going forward for both teams? What does the future look like for both the Cardinals and the Cubs? What free agent players are intriguing? Of course, we have Mike's dictionary segment. We wouldn't do a show without that. And then we're going to conclude with bold predictions for each team. But first, I have to introduce my friend, the co-host of the show, the man whose only poor life decision is the baseball team that he follows, Mike Jones. What's going on, sir?
If you think that's my only poor life decision, you have a misinformed perspective of me. Listen, I've reached the end of the internet.
What did you find? What's at the end of the internet? I think everybody wants to know.
Well, it's not Rob Manfred. I can tell you that.
Oh, that's good. I'm so happy that Rob Manfred is not at the end of the internet. Saying kind of like a Matrix like persona. Welcome. You've reached the end of the internet. So tell us about your journey to the end of the internet.
Well, listen, the Googles, the Googlers, they've been telling me for a little while now, like there's this warning that's popped up and it says, hey, you're out of storage and you can buy more storage. And I thought, that's what we older guys do. You gotta have the
you swat realities away from you, like you can just get it away.
And apparently they were telling the truth because I thought it was just a scam. They just want to make $2 off me. I mean, you think about all the people that use the Googles, and if all the people that use the Googles pay $2. How much money they're making.
I know, right?
Now, I know there's some infrastructure involved, but so it said you may not be able to send or receive email, and I was no longer sending or receiving email when I woke up this morning. It was the strangest thing because every morning when you wake up, you have 230 emails.
Oh, yeah. From all sorts of people that you want to talk to, like, promotional, whatever, who, what's it,
right.
Whatever you signed up. Like, I don't know. Like, I get these all the time. Here, let me see if I can find one.
And I think that's part of the scam.
Yeah.
See, because what Google does is they fill up your email with unnecessary emails, and then they ask you to pay money to get more email storage.
Yeah. Like I got one on here right now from AT&T Fiber because I'm an AT&T customer.
Oh,
right. And there's a picture of a man with a what can only be described as like a patch of white in his hair, just one odd patch of white at the very at the top of his forehead of white hair. It seems to be some kind of fashion statement. He's wearing a watch. He looks very nice, and he's on his computer. I'm assuming using AT&T Fiber, which cannot be. I don't know how they can do that because isn't Google a different company than AT&T, or has Google bought out AT&T?
I'm pretty sure it's all one company now.
Yeah, because Google Fiber is what we use here in Kansas City. And I guess maybe they don't have a trademark over the word fiber. I bet those like granola bars that you eat that have fiber in them are like, what? Google Fiber? Like what? How does the internet help with digestion? I don't know. But why is the word fiber? Like why? Like, can you explain that to me? Do we know why the word fiber is used in regards to the internet? Since you're a man who's reached the end of the internet, I mean, I don't. Yeah, perhaps you know this. You need to excrete some emails. Apparently,
I think I can explain this to you.
Okay.
And I can do this by pulling out of my drawer a very antiquated piece of, this may be a young whippersnapper such as yourself. This could be, so this right here is what's called a cable cord. It's a thing that's not connected to Wi-Fi or the cloud or anything like that. And you used to have to lay one of these things through your room and hook it up to your computer. And so what's inside this thing is little fiber optics, they call them.
Oh, I see.
And so now what we do with these is we gather, well, I mean, just as an example, what we do is we gather up all these cords that we have that at one time were very necessary to the process of doing anything whatsoever. And we throw them in a drawer because we think maybe they might at some point once again be needed. And they kind of keep gathering and growing.
Yeah. And that looks like what you used to strangle the final boss that was at the end of the internet.
Someday I will.
He's just like, you'll never be able to defeat me, and then you pull out the cord from 15 years ago. He's like, oh no, that's what I don't want to see anymore. It's like and then he either runs away off the edge of the internet, or you just you like lasso him with that, and then he just explodes.
Yeah, that's kind of what.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we just made up a video game called The End of the Internet. Can't you just picture it? It's like a 64 pixel game that you would play on your Nintendo. Just because that would be funny. Like a game about the internet is just about the least graphical video game you can possibly imagine.
I'm pretty sure I might. No, I was hoping I was being able to pull out a joystick.
Yeah. You play it. You have to play it like the Atari.
No joysticks in my drawer. Lots of cords.
Darn.
Lots of cords, cables.
Yeah.
Whatnot.
Maybe there's a cord for the Atari in there somewhere.
Yeah. Maybe.
Well, Mike, should we talk about the baseball?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've got some other stuff that we can talk about too, along the way, but it'll intersect well. Wait, hold on a second. Wait a minute. Do you have a whiteboard?
Yeah,
is that a whiteboard?
Yeah, it says things. Yeah, it's a whiteboard.
What is that? Have you gone all professional on me? What in the world?
I mean, if you call a whiteboard professionalism, this is an office, Mike. I've got, we built a legit office. I have books over there. I mean, I have baseball books that I use to do research with. I don't just come to this show like you, saying,
whoa. What's that say? The Washington Post?
What is that? Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. Hopefully I don't. Well, I'm gonna. It's Chicago
not really
Bears.
helping me to get closer to the camera.
See, it's the Chicago Bears. I got this for my birthday one year.
I like that.
And it's like all the clippings or whatever.
I thought this was a baseball show.
Yeah, but you asked about this, so this is your fault.
Well, I thought you worked for the Washington Post. That's
no. I mean, it does kind of look like that. So, see the Giants humble all these news clippings from
that's cool.
You see the ref getting tackled there. The ref's the lead blocker on that play.
Again, it doesn't help when you get closer to the camera.
Oh, really?
No, yeah. You'd think.
Hopefully I can put this here without wrecking everything. All right.
Why are your those Cardinals players kissing in that bobblehead? What's the
They're not. I don't think they're kissing per se. They're just happy that they won the World Series in 1982.
Who is it?
Daryl Porter and Bruce Sutter, which
Oh,
R.I.P. to Bruce Sutter.
R.I.P. Yep, R.I.P. Suter.
So,
Yeah,
should we have this conversation now that you've stalled us long enough? We talked
yeah.
about the end of the season. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Well, I mean, as far as the end of the season goes, you know, I don't know. We're not using. I don't know if we're using the word or we're not using the word rebuild or what. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you sold off everybody. The Cubs now have 6 years following the World Series championship to end the drought of all droughts. The Cubs are officially down to one player remaining from the roster of the World Series championship, and that is Kyle Hendricks.
Oh, not Wilson Contreras?
Wilson Contreras was offered a I'm not going to use the qualifying offer.
Oh, yeah.
And turned it down. And $19 million qualifying offer, by the way, which, he's one of the best hitting catchers in the game of baseball. And I think, it'll be sad to see him, probably go to the Cardinals. It's I guess it's part of the process now in professional sports. Really what everybody wishes for is that they had some continuity and consistency with teams, and teams could control their players more, or that players would have more. And I know players, if there's players who watch our show, they're going to be, what the hell is this guy talking about? But the players would have more loyalty to a team or an organization, that it wouldn't just be all about the money. But obviously, it's a business. I mean, there's that side of it. That part makes me want to go take a shower, because just because of nostalgia for baseball, right? I mean, think about the curse of the Bambino. We'll never have a curse of the Bambino again. There will never be anything like that because it's everybody trades everybody now. It's like you get rid of your best players. I mean, part of the reason we won a championship was because we had a guy who came over from another team that was a champion, Ben Zobrist.
Yep.
Couple guys, John Lester. I mean, Miguel Montero. I mean, they weren't Cubs first, and I don't know. I think there was a time in baseball, and I think even during my lifetime, when teams had players that were theirs, that were raised up through their program, that were, fully St. Louis Cardinals, fully New York Yankees, fully Chicago Cubs, and went deep into the postseason, potentially winning World Series, and it was a homegrown thing, and I think that's one more area, we always talk about or debate the question, why, is baseball losing fans and all that, what can we do to save the game? And, well, it's a game that doesn't need saving. First of all, there are a lot of fans out there. Are you stuck on the YouTube again? Did you make sure you're not listening to the YouTube? Because you might not be able to hear me. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't know if I know what I'm saying, but what was the point?
We were trying to figure out.
We're talking the end of the season.
Yeah, we're talking the end of the season, which I think it's a good time for me to transition into the Cardinals' end of the season, because a lot of fans are going to look at it as a disappointment, right? And it is.
Well, and
because
let me say just one more thing about the Cubs' end of the season before you get into the Cardinals' end of the season, because I rambled a little bit there, but we did win. We did win several games in October. There you go.
Okay. Well, you didn't win the Central like the Cardinals did. So the Cardinals, obviously they lost to the Philadelphia Phillies in the postseason.
Cubs swept the Phillies
in a game where the Cardinals were ahead 2-0 going into the ninth inning. And I think you saw in that game a lot of the concerns that I had about the St. Louis Cardinals play out. Depth in the bullpen was an issue. They were trying to stretch out Ryan Helsley to have a 2-inning save, and it just didn't work out. You saw the offense falter because, Goldschmidt, Arenado, went cold at the wrong time. And when you're dependent on two guys in your offense to make a lot happen, that's what happens. And the only offense that we had in that game, I believe, was a 2-run home run by Juan Yepez, who's not really an everyday starter for your team. A good bench player for sure, but he's not an everyday starter for your team. And of course, in a 3-game series, whoever wins the first game has a ton of momentum going into the second game. And the Cardinals don't have any excuses because they certainly had a team that could have made a deep run. But unfortunately, the weaknesses of this roster just reared their ugly head at the wrong time. Lack of depth in the bullpen, lack of really anybody who could hit consistently outside of Arenado and Goldschmidt. And that includes Yachty, who, for nostalgia's sake, didn't really have a good year at the plate, had a strange last season, if you look back on it, to be fair, where he spent a lot of time in Puerto Rico playing basketball. That's a thing that we've forgotten about. And to move us forward, and, Pujols was obviously awesome. But the good news for the Cardinals heading into 2023 is that they were second in the MLB in attendance. They averaged just about 40,000 people, almost 41,000 people per game. And likely their payroll is going to go up. And so what does that mean? That could mean that they're going to spend a little bit more. And we'll talk a little bit more about where they could spend that money later in the show. But to wrap up this season, I don't think you can really describe it without using the word disappointed, because yes, we got to see all of that magic happen with Pujols and him getting to 700 home runs, and Yachty and Wainwright breaking the start, the battery record, which, I don't think that record will ever be broken. Maybe, I hope I'm wrong, because I hope that teams, players stick on teams, like Mike was saying, a long time together. And honestly, Mike, that's something that you're right. It doesn't happen a lot. So when it does happen, in the case of St. Louis with Yachty and Wainwright, it's something to be celebrated. And I think you can be disappointed, but I think you can also look back on a season like this with many, many fond memories. And I think Cardinals fans will for a long time. So that is my wrap up of 2023. And it leads us into a conversation about what's next. And Mike, I'm going to ask you first. What do you think, the future looks like for the Cubs next year? Where do you see this team trending? Do you see them competing next year? Do you see it as another rebuild year?
Yeah.
What's your feeling?
I guess if I'm going to, speak into that, there are interesting moves, obviously, right now, because the 40-man roster has to be completed, and all of that kind of thing. And there were several non-tender decisions, and there was a lot of arbitration that was avoided by the Cubs as well. In the last few days, some of the decisions were rather interesting to Cubs fans. Rafael Ortega was one of the players that was non-tendered, which would indicate to Cubs fans that there's going to be something that's going to be done in center field in regards to moves during the offseason. Braylon Marquez, who was an up-and-coming pitcher, one of our top 20 prospects at one time, had some shoulder issues. We haven't seen him for a couple years. He got non-tendered. And then Alexander Vizcaíno, another pitcher, and that's the prospect game, right? Like, so the Cubs are right now obviously trying to build the system, build the farm system, build the foundation of everything. And I think Houston Astros have demonstrated how to cheat on several levels, but also that the best way to build a farm system is to do it through just sheer numbers, right? Because the prospect game, it's hit and miss. You just don't know what you're going to get, who's going to come up, who's going to get injured, who's going to, and hit and miss. I mean, it's very obviously intentional on the owners and the GM's parts, all that kind of thing. And then the Cubs avoided arbitration with Adrian Sampson and Rowan Wick. Now,
former Cardinal.
Yeah, and Rowan Wick, I don't know. I think a lot of Cubs fans just aren't sure. Rowan Wick's that guy that comes on. He's this huge guy that comes on, and when he comes on, you kind of go, Wick. But then his numbers would show that we shouldn't have that reaction, right? It's kind of like when Kimbrel first came to the Cubs. It was like, oh, Kimbrel, and then he'd give up a game, walk-off home run, and then a year later we were all like, welcome to the jungle. We got,
yeah,
and having a ball with it, and then we were like, no, don't let Kimbrel go, So I think, there's a lot of emotion that's connected with Rowan Wick too in that regard, because he's kind of seen that way. So, as far as next steps for the Cubs, listen, we're building Pete Crow Armstrong, Hayden Wesneski, Brennan Davis, and so that Matt Mervis, there's all these names now that are kind of like, okay, we're talking about the future. We're talking about the future. And then of course, I've got word from, top people in the organization that there's going to be a good off-season spending. There's nothing to worry about. So, we're looking at guys like Carlos Correa, Cody Bellinger, names like that. And I think that there will be some moves made, because I really do not believe that the ownership, the GM, they're not content with the way things are. They are not content with having a finish that's, third in the NL Central, 77 wins. But going on to next year, I look to see an 80 win type team, 80 to 88 win type team. What does that mean for, the Cubs in the standings? How many games did the Cardinals win this season to win the division?
93.
Yeah. So, makes you competitive. Let's see. Okay, Cubs won 74 games. Sorry, looking at the numbers now. I think we're going to have more of a competitive Milwaukee 86 and 76 type season next year. And 2025 will be the year that we'll be back in contention for winning the division and potentially another World Series.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. Like when you're talking rebuild, right? And those words I firmly believe, and this is just myself talking. I firmly believe that, and this is not just me blowing smoke. It's not just because I'm a Cardinals fan. I believe that organizations can set themselves up to have success in the present and to have success in the future. And
Right.
I just think you look at the track record of the Cardinals. I'm looking at it right now. Since 2011, they've missed the postseason 3 times. And each of those seasons, 2016, 2017, and 2018, they had a winning record. They won 86 games in 16, 83 games in 17. In 2018, they won 88 games. And they have not, since 2011, had a losing record. They haven't since 2007 was the last time they had a losing record at 78 and 84. It's 15 years ago.
Yeah.
They had a losing record.
Yeah.
That's something that Cardinals fans should not take for granted.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
they've missed the postseason 4 times since 2009. I mean,
Right.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, and so I say that because the Cardinals are not some big market. I know they're not a small market, like I joke around with you, but they're not.
Well, second in attendance.
They're not Chicago. There's no way. They're not Chicago. They're not Los Angeles. They're not New York.
Who are the teams?
Those are big markets.
Who are the teams that bookend the Cardinals in the attendance standings? It's got to be the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Well, the Cardinals rank second in the NL in attendance this year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's got to be the Yankees and the Dodgers on either side of them, first and third, right?
Well, that doesn't indicate like a big market of.
No, I recognize that. I mean, I'm not saying
it just means the fans show up to the game.
Yeah, and tip of the hat to you. It's tip of the hat to the Cardinals for having those kinds of numbers. Cubs were like 14th.
Let me bring it around to the Cubs, though. Like the Cubs are one of these big markets, right? Where I don't understand, and we've talked about this many times before. It's going to be interesting to see if they stick with this rebuild or if they try to compete next year, because I think it's possible with the amount of money that they potentially have to spend. Like they could buy some guys and they could try to compete this year, but that's going to come at the expense of building up that farm system the way that they planned to initially. So It's going to be interesting to see. I think that you stick down that route, because if you build this thing the right way, I don't really see why you couldn't become the Los Angeles Dodgers of the Midwest, or the New York Yankees, or because, I mean,
well, I've got an answer to that if you want it. I mean,
what is it?
I mean, the real answer to that is, and it's pretty simple. We've spent a lot more money on motels, hotels, restaurants, ballparks, locker rooms, all of those things, and good, bad, or indifferent, however you feel about all of that, in a long-term viewpoint from a business perspective, all of that's going to pay off. They have a federally recognized landmark. They won a World Series championship during the time that they were doing all this. They were buying up all the buildings around Wrigley Field. They're turning that into a more modern day, like it or lump it. They're turning it into a more modern feel. I mean, this next week, they're having a big event at Wrigley Field. a winter wonderland where there's going to be an ice skating rink in Wrigley Field and a snow slide and chalets that you can rent in the outfield and a beer tent and da 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 da. And, so, there's that business aspect so where's the Cubs money been going? Well, that's why we sold off the core. The first promise was we're going to bring a World Series championship to Chicago. That was the promise. Promise fulfilled. We're going to save Wrigley Field. Promise fulfilled, right? And if you'd rather go to the Taco Bell and have diarrhea on the train ride home, then that's one thing. But if you'd rather go to Big Star and, I mean, that's just how it rolled. And so the money, that's where it's been. Now all that stuff's been built up. And so now it's time to start looking at players again. That's kind of a hard word. I mean, we want our team to do well. That's what we want, right? And I don't know if the Cardinals would have a similar story, Ballpark Village and all of that kind of stuff that was built and around. And, how were they during those years? When the money was going towards the infrastructure area, because it is a business, right? I would argue the Yankees weren't really great when they tore down the house that Ruth built and moved over. Were they winning World Series championships then? No, because money's got to go somewhere. So to me, that's the answer in terms of what, the Cubs are going to be what you described. I hope it's during my lifetime. I hope that, because it's going to be Yankees, Cubs, Dodgers. That those are going to be the big names, the big, big market teams in Major League Baseball. How could they not be? I mean, really, how could they not be? You're really going to have to screw something up big time if that doesn't happen. Right? So that's something to be excited for.
Do you know what? Yeah. Do you know what year the Cardinals built their new stadium?
I don't.
2006.
Okay.
Was the first year that they played in that ballpark. Do you want to know what happened in 2006?
Yeah, right. They won a championship. Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Well, it answers the question that they timed it out well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they were already paying the players. And hey, let's listen. Listen, don't make a mistake here in regards to that, because when did the Cubs build Gallagher Way, and when did the Hotel Zachary go up, and when did the scoreboards go in, and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And guess what happened then?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, right around the same time period. It was all going on at the same time. When did they redo the locker room? When did they,
But yeah, you just made a huge argument. Like, anyway,
tell me what go.
Like about how building new stuff means that's where the money's going. And then you build a whole stadium.
Yeah.
And you still win the World Series, and then the Cubs build a scoreboard. It's okay.
The coffers are empty. That's what I'm saying. Listen, it's just like this is the sickening part. This is the part that does not sit well with me. Okay. All right, with any athletics, etc. Follow the money. Any team, the Houston Astros won a World Series they're not a good example because they're cheaters. But the thing that we have to be careful, and no, tip of the hat to Dusty. I'm glad he won one.
Yeah, me too. Like that's the one thing that I was like, that was the one saving grace about Houston winning. It's like, how
Exactly.
can I don't know if you can dislike Dusty Baker, but
No,
anyway,
you can't.
like
You can't. No. But back to my point,
mhm.
it's like a presidential election.
Okay. Well,
okay. Whoever spends the most money wins. I would like to see the statistics on the last 10 years World Series champions and see where they ranked in spending system wide, organizationally, not just players, but organizationally, to see who spent the most money and who won the most games. I'd love to see that correlation. That's what made Moneyball a movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there was a book written about that. I don't know that we're going to see that again.
Yeah.
I hope we do. I hope we see. But when the Kansas City Royals won the World Series, why'd they win the World Series?
Because they drafted well and developed well. I mean, that you have to if you're a small market like that,
right? And paid guys. I mean, they had to. But I'd love to. Okay, that's dataless claim right there, right? But I would love to see the data on that.
Yeah, just to answer your question, according to the boardroom, the top 10 highest payrolls in baseball last year, as of August 8th, 2022. Dodgers, number one, $265 million.
Okay.
Opening day payroll was, I don't know how they calculate this, but their opening day payroll was $277 million. Mets, $261 million. Yankees, $251 million. Philadelphia Phillies, $242 million. San Diego Padres, $220 million. Red Sox, $207 million.
Ooh.
White Sox, $109. Yeah, that hurts, right? Spending $207 million on your ball club to not make the playoffs. $196 million for the White Sox. $182 million for the Astros. There you go. Braves, $181 million. Los Angeles Angels, $169 million. So, like, and I don't want to go too off the rails here, but did it use that? The disparity used to be that? I mean, from number 1 to number 10 is like $100 million.
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous.
Point. Yeah.
Like, the Cardinals aren't in the top 10. Like, the Cardinals will never spend that much money,
Yeah.
So is that, I mean, if what you're saying is true, the Cardinals like have no hope, right?
Listen,
like they'll never get up there. They just won't. They never have and they never will. I don't think so.
Yeah. And if there's a beautiful thing about the Cardinals, though, and there isn't, but if someone were to posit that there was,
at the end of the internet where such things are possible.
the thing that would be beautiful is that they arguably they are one of the last teams in baseball who are doing it old school.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's a team that's built on its history, and baseball as much is a sport that is built on its history.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's just a natural build for a team like that. And that they're responsible too. Like they never, I am shouting on the rooftops for them to just, push their chips into the middle of the table. And there's probably a good reason that I'm not their general manager or their president of baseball operations, because I probably would have made the Juan Soto trade. I still think maybe if you ask Mozeliak if there was ever a time to make a trade like that, I still think that was the time if you were ever going to do it. And that tells me that they're never going to do it. Right.
Yeah. Right.
So that's what it's going to be. It's going to be interesting to see what they do this offseason, because when you look at the Cardinals in the future, I sent you a top. I'm looking at the top 30 prospects from the 2022 Fall League. And
Right.
I'm looking at the number one player is Jordan Walker, outfielder for the St. Louis Cardinals in their minor league. And the description reads as follows: Walker looks nearly ready to take over in right field for St. Louis with his massive right-handed power and a strong arm that clocked at 99.5 miles per hour on one throw. He's 6'5", 220 pounds, has a naturally long swing and steps in the bucket, but he still has good plate coverage and generates plenty of leverage. Number one player from the Fall League, plays for the St. Louis Cardinals in their system. Now you scroll down to number 7, Mason Wynn, shortstop, number 2 prospect for the St. Louis Cardinals, 51st prospect overall. Jordan Walker's the 6th overall prospect. And it says here that, he's a legitimate 80. Like, I guess that's the best you can go on a defensive scale. He has one of the best arms in the minor leagues. What I'm saying here is this is how you do it.
Right.
Like,
right.
you keep the MLB talent strong, and you draft well, and you develop at the same time, and you keep the machine a churning, right? Where teams get in trouble is they invest way too much up here, deplete this, and then once this MLB talent, I don't know what I'm doing with the arms here, the scales of imbalance, like we're at the end of the internet here. When the MLB talent dries up, and then you're left with no talent in the minors either. And I think there's some truth to this with the Astros too. I think they done it a similar way. They had to go through a process like a cleanse. They had to be bad for a long time, built up the minor league talent. That talent rose to the major leagues. They kept developing the talent in the minor leagues. They kept that machine churning. And I think that's what the Cubs are trying to do. And if the Cubs do that, and if they build it the right way, they can sustain that, much like the Dodgers too.
Right.
So, and the Cubs are going to be able to spend money as well. So it's a scary prospect, but the question is, are they going to be patient enough? Are they going to do it the right way? We'll see.
Yeah.
But the future, like, my point is, though, for the Cardinals, Jordan Walker is going to be your right fielder next year. I believe that wholeheartedly. So when you look at the roster and you look at some of the moves that could be made, obviously you have a first baseman in Paul Goldschmidt, MVP. You have a third baseman now. He signed 5 years, Nolan Arenado. Those are the anchors of your team, obviously. Shortstop is, I'm sorry, I'm here to tell you, they aren't going to spend money for a shortstop. Tommy Edmonds going to be the shortstop. Pencil it in. They're not. I know Cardinals fans.
Pen it in. You mean
pen it in? Pen it in. It's like, I'm sorry. And we'll talk about Paul DeYoung in a minute. The Cardinals that's a position they see filled. I'm telling you right now, there are other needs on this roster that are more important than that. And Tommy Edman is a fine baseball player. He's good. Like, it's good enough.
I think like Nick Madrigal is a fine baseball player, but he's not long-term Cubs material.
Yeah.
As the Cubs are looking for a shortstop, there's all this talk about shortstop. I'm going Nico Horner. I mean, he proved himself this year. Nico Horner proved himself this year that he can play that position. Why are we in hard on a shortstop? I've been wondering about that. But it's because Horner can go over to second.
Yeah.
And he'll be just fine.
Speaking of second base, the Cardinals' second base, I mean, you saw Nolan Gorman. Nolan Gorman's going to factor into with this roster as one of our, top prospects in the minors before he came up. So he's going to factor in at second base. Brendan Donovan finished 3rd in the Rookie of the Year voting. Love that guy. He's a St. Louis baseball player if I've ever seen one. Just gritty, takes pitches. I think he's the perfect leadoff hitter too. Keep your eye on that. I think he's going to factor in the leadoff spot more and more. So I think the infield is set. I think our infield is pretty much set. So I wouldn't look for an upgrade there because our infield is and Cardinals fans don't want to hear this, one of the best infields in baseball. It is, with those two cornerstones at first and third, and then Tommy Edmonds, a good defensive shortstop. Paul DeJong's contract looms over this as well. He's owed $9 million this year. There's really no way for the Cardinals to get out of that unless they trade him away. That's an awkward part of this. And he's going to be around this year unless they can trade him, because they're not going to cut him and lose that $9 million. They just, that's not something the Cardinals do.
Right.
And then when you look at the outfield, we're penning in Jordan Walker in right field. We're going to pen him in. He's going to be our day one opening day right fielder. I guarantee it, like 100%. Like, sorry, Lars Nootbaar, you're not going to be in right field. Likely Dylan Carlson.
What will happen to Nootbaar if that is the case?
He'll be a nice utility player. I mean, he's a left-handed bat. I mean, he's got some pop. I mean, he's an athletic guy. I mean, he'll still be a nice bench player for us. And if there's a moment where Walker struggles, I'm sure that he could give Walker a day off, or he could give. There's going to be some depth. There's going to be some depth in our outfield now.
Yeah.
I think you can pen in Dylan Carlson in center, right? I think you can pen in Dylan Carlson. But Tyler O'Neill's interesting. I want to pen him in, but I don't know if I can, because he's really just had the one good year. He's like the potential is off the chain. I really wonder, and this might be a possibility, that the Cardinals could package. I don't think they're going to do it, but it's possible, like package like Tyler O'Neill and some lower level prospects to upgrade an outfield position, or perhaps trade for a catcher. Because in my mind, and let's just put Tyler O'Neill there for now, pending, because I think left field is a question mark right now. I think catcher is obviously the biggest need on this roster, and you're gonna have to upgrade that position. And obviously Contreras is the best catcher on the market, and I don't think it's close. So that's an option. You could also trade for Sean Murphy. That's going to be a tough ask, because the A's are not dumb. They're going to ask for a lot for him, but you need to upgrade the catcher position, because Andrew Kisner is ideally a backup catcher. He's a fine player, but he's ideally a backup catcher. And in my mind, you're also going to have to add a starter and some depth to the bullpen, because I think if you're going to make me rank the needs, catcher 1, bullpen 2, starting pitcher 3.
Right.
But that's kind of my overview of the St. Louis Cardinals roster as I see it. I think Nootbaar is going to be a fine utility player. I think Gorman's likely going to be the DH. I think Donovan's going to be our starting second baseman. I don't think they upgrade shortstop, because they see other needs on the roster. Paul DeJong's contract makes that too awkward, but they are going to have some money to spend. But I think they're going to look for. I think there's a good chance Contreras is a Cardinal, but we'll see.
Yeah. And I would love to, for the Cubs, it's interesting because at catcher, Yan Gomes, PJ Higgins, obviously we've got to look to do something in terms of depth at that position. Miguel Amaya was a huge prospect, and then also had some injury issues. And I'm don't hear his name a lot. Not exactly sure where he sits, and probably need to do more research on that. Patrick Wisdom is not going to be our third base guy forever. I don't know, where we're headed there. Also at third base, or in the infield, Nico Horner. And obviously we're looking to solidify that. Now we've got this prospect, Matt Mervis, who's potentially coming up. There's some questions about him. I mean, his numbers have been incredible. Like he has had an incredible minor league year this last year. And I hope that he really, again, like any prospect, you sure hope that he pans out. because and I don't know if you've heard the name Matt Mervis or not, but he is probably on the list of prospects that you emailed me. Cubs number 21, 23rd. He plays for the Mesa Solar Sox. Had 36 homers during the regular season, paced the minors and extra base hits with 78, total bases 310, and RBIs 119. And so 24 years old, first base guy. Can we is he something that can develop into a big league player? And sure hope so. Numbers are looking good, right? But there are questions about his bat, I think, still. It's that whole thing. Well, okay, great, you're great in the minors, but wait until you see major league pitching. Right. But the hope is there for that. And then in the outfield, obviously we have a Gold Glover in Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, in right, like we've talked about. We're going to be looking for a center fielder, and right now penciling in Reyes, Franmil Reyes as the DH. I hope that he has just looking at the dude is huge. He's a big dude. If he could pull off a Kyle Schwarber like turnaround, like you remember the year where Kyle Schwarber came back. I mean, at one point he was kind of looking like the round mound to rebound, and then the next year he came back fit as a fiddle and ready to play, and it paid off for him. And then for whatever reason, we let him go for nothing.
You got a pick. Didn't you get a pick for him because you non-tendered him, right?
Yeah, nothing. That's the one that makes me the most angry, personally.
Yeah.
But Ian Happ's out there now, so I'm okay with that. So I think you're looking at him, and then you've got Stroman, Steele, coming back in the starting rotation. Projected lineups right now for the Cubs for next year, honestly, it's very difficult to do, because I think part of it is going to be what happens, the hot stove. Who are we buying? Because if we don't buy, and again, I have it on pretty good authority that our off-season spending is going to be decent. But if we don't buy, then we're looking at another 70-some win season and waiting again.
That could be the right move too. I mean, I don't know. I mean, depending on how. I mean, I'm sure they want to add people, but if I were the Cubs, I would approach it very conservatively. I would approach it, I would sell Chicago just like St. Louis sells St. Louis, and the fan base.
Yeah.
And because I do think, like, just thinking about it from a Cubs perspective, if you add Carlos Correa, for instance, and give him a huge contract, whatever he wants, because he's likely going to get what he wants, I would assume. What does that do for you? I mean, if you don't have pitching or bullpen, or you know what I mean? If I were a Cubs fan, I know it sucks, but I think you got to go through at least another year of what you've been doing to build up the farm system the right way. And I think that's the right move, because unfortunately, you pushed all your chips in to win that World Series, and you won the World Series, and that's worth it to win a World Series.
Yeah.
But it just left your farm system depleted.
Yeah.
And then, it just takes time to build that back up.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because a lot of guys, the number of guys that were playing in the postseason who were part of the farm system, even during that run, people forget that those guys were Cubs. That's always an interesting aspect to me too. There's a lot of names out there that were playing in those games that people don't even remember were part of that whole process when they built the first championship team. The guy that I forgot to talk about, of course, is Christopher Morel, which, he's a great, just a great kind of, like, he's played all over the field as well, and so he'll fit into the equation somehow. And then we talk a lot about Carlos Correa, but Xander Bogaerts is out there still, I think, so there are possibilities there. And I don't know what free agents are available at first base, because I don't know if Mervis is the answer yet, or if he still needs to prove himself a little bit. But that's another one of those pieces that is kind of up in the air. Is like a Yuli Gurriel available, or I just don't. Is he? Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, it could also be. Well, it's not Anthony Rizzo. I mean, we were disappointed to see that because that would have been a great reunion.
Yeah, because he's back with the Yankees.
Yeah. So yeah, the opening day piece, that it's just
this is a way too early projection that we're trying to make. But
sure.
Real quick, I didn't touch on who I'm penning in for the Cardinals in their rotation because there's a lot here, really. Obviously, you're penning in Adam Wainwright. We haven't talked about him coming back yet, but he's going to be back for another year, so he's going to factor into that rotation. You have to pen in Jordan Montgomery, who I think they're going to look to work out a deal with. Miles Michaelis, pen him in. Steven Matz, pen him in. Jack Flaherty, and that's your 5, I think, right now.
Yeah.
It's going to be there's going to be some awkward conversations. I think Dakota Hudson, honestly, is expendable. I think that's somebody they could look to trade. Matthew Liberatore, I think, is a piece that, I mean, they could look to move as well. But there's depth there with the rotation. Those two guys can step in. And Andre Palante, too, has proven that he can start games. And I think Zach Thompson's really underrated, too. Like, left-handed pitcher, really young. Like, I think he was a former first-round pick of the Cardinals in 2019. And I don't know, all he did this year was, appear in 22 games and have a 2.08 ERA and in 34 2/3 innings pitched. And he's only 25 years old. So there's a lot there still for the Cardinals. And they're going to be a contender. I think they're going to win the division again because I think Milwaukee's on the decline. And I don't think Chicago's ready yet. And neither is, I think Pittsburgh's going to be terrible. And I think the Reds are going to be terrible. So likely they're going to be the favorites to win the division again. And it's going to be fascinating to see what they do because according to Katie Woo of The Athletic, and I don't buy it, I'll believe it when I see it, but they've got their eye on a superstar. Like I said, I'll believe it when I see it, but they have definite pieces that a club would be interested in a trade. They have prospects. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? As much as it might pain you, do you agree that the Cardinals are the favorites entering in next year as of right now?
How can they not be?
I mean, the Central's weak. Like,
they won the Central this year, and what's happened to any of the other teams? They're definitely the favorite.
Yeah, and that would be a case for me as a Cubs fan, if I were a Cubs fan, to be like, let's just, let's add to our prospect pool. Let's pick and choose which free agents we want. Like Yuli Gurriel on a 1-year deal might be a perfect fit for the Cubs. Maybe look to add foundational pieces where you can at good discount deals, but be responsible, like be frugal, because there's going to be a time when all these things line up for the Cubs and you're going to be able to build that machine the right way. You want to build it the right way. If you
Yeah,
build it, they
definitely.
will come.
Yep.
And you just be Cubs fans, like, you just have to be patient, because I think they're doing it the right way. We'll see. We'll see if they continue that
Yeah.
down that road. But
Yeah.
it's honestly, it's scary as a Cardinals fan. It's nice right now because the Cardinals are good,
Right.
but in 2 or 3 years, when Goldschmidt's in his upper 30s and when Arenado's in his mid 30s, you know,
Yeah.
that's probably going to be your time. But we'll see.
But listen, when okay, and I'm of course having a hard time getting back to the list. There it is. When you go through that prospect list and talk about all the Cardinals that are on that list that you shared.
Yeah.
Now these prospect
And
lists.
that's also why they're not going to get a shortstop, because Mason Wynn is in their system, and I
Yeah.
think they view him as the shortstop of the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've got guys that aren't on this list this year that are younger. I mean, the South Bend Cubs won the Midwest League Championship this year. Now, for some baseball fans are like, what the hell is the Midwest League, right? But the reason you and I know the Midwest League is because of the Burlington Bees, who Manfred screwed, and but that league produced, and we know that league eventually produced Major League Baseball All-Stars, and it's ball.
All the players who came up with the Royals in 2015, Moustakas, Eric Hosmer, Salvador Perez, all of them, like Lorenzo Cain, what's his face that your son announced his name? I can't think of it right now. Speedster. Dyson, Gerard Dyson.
Dyson. Yep.
Yeah. All those guys came through Burlington.
Yeah.
And so that's where it all starts.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that's really how you sustain success.
Yep.
And the Cardinals, I mean, Cardinals fans have been spoiled for sure, but I think they're the model. Like, if I were to take over a franchise as a general manager, let's just say you and me are co-GMs and we have to pick an approach. It's like, well, first step, we're going to build up our farm system.
Yeah.
That's priority number one, because we know that leads to the major league level. It's just like building a house. You build it from the foundation up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the path you guys are on. Like, and it's a path to get excited about. And I know, like, fans are not going to like that in the short term, but in the long term, like 5 years down the road, you're going to be like, we are competing for a World Series every year.
Yeah.
Just like the Cardinals. And so you're going to, like, that mix match of having veterans at the major league level and continually feeding that minor league system, because it's a machine that needs fed all the time. You think it's good, but you keep feeding it, keep feeding it.
Yep.
Like, and because you're going to miss a lot more than you hit down there.
Yep.
But if you keep feeding it, you're going to hit enough.
Yep. And you're absolutely right. You have to feed it, which is part of the reason that it pains me that Manfred did what he did to Major League Baseball when he eliminated minor league teams throughout the country, because I just don't understand the thinking on that. And the owners should have been against that. And
agreed. 1,000% agree.
Much more strongly than they were, I think, not knowing all of the situation, but for sure. And that's why it's exciting for me as a Cubs fan. Like, on my Christmas list that I sent to my mother, I'm like, Mom,
you're gonna have to clip that.
Mom, it would be awesome if if Santa would bring me a Mesa Solar Sox hat. And guess what's sold out? Guess what you can't find even on the intraweb? No, you can't find a fitted Mesa Solar Sox hat. Did we even know what the Mesa Solar Sox were before this year?
No, but it's a great name. I might have to look for a Salt River hat.
Right. I mean, and because listen, when we're talking about those things, there is something good happening. The run of the mill everyday. I don't mean to sound critical, but fan that
Short for fanatic.
okay, that doesn't know who the Mesa Solar Sox are, or the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, or the South Bend Cubs, or those. If you're not talking about those names right now as a Chicago Cubs fan, you're out of the loop.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what's building.
Well, look at and I don't want to talk about this too much, but look at the Chicago Bears and what they had to do. I mean, like, and I know that sport isn't as good as baseball because like it's very dependent on one player and baseball is not. I guess you could say baseball is dependent on the pitcher, right? I guess you could say that, but the pitcher can only go once every 5 days. Like the way they're building is also the right way. They're building through the draft. They're clearing up space. I mean, they could be I mean, they have over $120 million of cap space next year.
Yeah.
And you know what they're going to do? They're going to draft some offensive linemen. They're going to sign some offensive linemen. I firmly like, because again, where do you build your team? You build it from inside out, like from the foundation out. And the foundation in football is the trenches, the offensive line, defensive line. Where's the foundation in baseball? Like we keep saying, it's the farm system.
Yeah.
And it's so important, and it's in our game. And Cardinals fans get frustrated with Mozeliak, but I think he recognizes that, and that's why he's one of the best GMs. And the few times he's gotten away with, like the few times he's done a move in recent history, I mean, it's for a star like Arenado and Goldschmidt. Where he messed up was he thought Ozuna was a star, and Ozuna was a good player, not a superstar.
We don't get everyone right.
Yeah, and he traded away the Cy Young. He traded away a Cy Young Award winner, Sandy Alcantara, who I happened to see pitch for the Cardinals when he was coming up.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, just think if we had him, that'd be nice.
Yeah. Just think if we had, right? Yeah. And the Cubs could say that too about several players, from the 2015, 2016 era.
But you know what? The reason he made that deal was because he was scared of the Cubs, because that was those mid 2000s or mid 2010 years, like where they missed the playoffs, like 2016. That was the year the Cubs won, but like Ozuna, like if you look at our roster in like 2014, 15, 16, 17, I think we had like Piscotty, Grichuk, those were some of the guys that came up through our system that we were depending on. And, he felt like he needed to make a move to bolster the lineup, and that's what he did. So
it just brings me joy to hear a statement like that. He was scared of the Cubs. I just think, that.
Oh yeah. That's, he was though. I mean, he felt like he needed to, he felt like he was competitive, and he felt like he needed to make a move. And he also gave up Zach Gallen in that deal too, I think.
And
so Zach Gallen's a good pitcher.
Yeah, and I hope he doesn't watch our show, because I wouldn't want him to hear this. But his strength is stick to the process.
Yeah. It's process. Like in the
process
Hobbit,
over product.
Yeah, it's like the Hobbit when Gandalf tells him to stay on the path. It's like, just stay on the path, don't chase anything else. It's just like, okay, we're gonna stick on the path, which is also why we're not gonna get a superstar shortstop. We're probably, like, if I'm looking at this free agent list and I'm guessing who the Cardinals are gonna get, I'm guessing like the superstar on here that sticks out like a sore thumb is Wilson Contreras.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, it's too perfect. It's almost too perfect. Where I could also see the Cardinals making a trade for a catcher, as long as they don't have to give up Jordan Walker or Mason Wynn. I could see Liberatore being on the table if somebody's interested in him, or Dakota Hudson, a player like that. Like those guys are kind of the odd men out in the rotation right now, but you can never have enough starting pitchers.
Yeah.
In the bullpen, who's available in free agency?
Welcome to the jungle.
Welcome to the Jungle's available. Craig Kimbrell, Kenley Jansen's available. Taylor Rogers, who Milwaukee traded for last year, is available. Andrew Chafin's available. I think any one of those guys would be an amazing addition to our bullpen. I know all of those guys are in their upper 30s or mid 30s, but I don't know why you couldn't sign one of those guys to a 1-year deal. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And like, that's, to me, that's a perfect fit for the Cardinals. Like, those are guys that are not going to command a ton of money, but you could get them on a 1 or 2 year deal, maybe $5 to $10 million. I don't know. I'm not an expert in contracts, but I'm assuming that that's the kind of player the Cardinals target. It just is.
Yeah.
And I think they need help there. If you're going to be a team that relies on your defense and is going to be in a lot of 1-2 run games, you're going to need a good bullpen. And that's something too that I don't know why major league teams just don't continually add pieces to their bullpen year in and year out, because bullpens is like one of the most random. You never know who's going to be good in your bullpen,
Yeah. And
it's so important.
Yeah. And I would say that, that's one thing that the Cubs have been getting right. I don't know what it is. Like they've been bringing in these guys and fixing them. The pitch lab. I don't know what it is, but when I look at the top ERAs in 2022 as far as ball clubs go, I'm just gonna run down the list from lowest. Let's see here. I want to make sure I have this right. Well, no, they didn't. Why is it not? Anyway. Okay, there we go. Now it's doing it the right way. I mean, the Cubs ERA was 4.12, which puts them in the top half. There's better numbers. I need it for the regular season. But in the month of September, their ERA was one of the lowest in the majors. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but as season-ending things, our pitching staff's ERA was one of the lowest in the majors in the final months of the season, which is a promising statistic to me, because that means that they're developing and getting better and that kind of thing. Now, for a team that's not in the playoff race, I don't know what that means as far as who they were facing in other, in the games that they played. But, they swept the Phillies in the last month of the season. I know that. And the Phillies were a postseason team that, so there's something to be said about that, that they were able to do that. So, in terms of the Cubs, and man, we could go on. I've got about 10 minutes left here before I've got to get rolling for something. But, I could see the Cubs. It's interesting to look at the free agent list. And you mentioned Wilson Contreras. The next top catchers on the next 4 catchers on that list, and I don't know how this is organized. I think it's according to WAR.
Yes, it is.
Okay. The next 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The next 11 catchers, according to WAR, on that list are all 30 and above, which I find to be very interesting, because we know those are the catchers. So what I see the Cubs looking to do, I see the Cubs looking to land a guy like Dom Nunez, or, even, I don't know. There's not a guy on this list that is under the age of 27. That's something to me, because the Cubs just let go Wilson Contreras. I mean, they made him a qualifying offer. Don't get me wrong. Is it possible that the Cubs could get him back? I suppose it is.
Right? Yeah, of course. Of course they could.
There's a possibility of that. Now, and I could see that happening from the aspect of that age.
Yeah.
right? Wilson's 31 years old. Catchers typically don't do what Yadier Molina did and catch until they're 52. I mean, that was an outlier. He's an outlier when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so, I don't think the catcher of the future for the Cubs is on this list.
Agreed. I agree 1,000%.
I could see us bringing in a Dom Nunez or a Luis Torrens, just because they're 27-ish, 28-ish, can get us through the next window here, 3 or 4 years potentially, and then we'll see the next great Cubs catcher come in, right? I forgot about Jose Abreu. The Cubs have a target on him. I don't know that we'll be able to land him. So that could be one that we see. And then Correa or Bogarts, Dansby Swanson would be sweet. And then we do need somebody. We need to be looking at third base. And so Justin Turner could be one of the targets. And, when it comes to the Cardinals and how they've done things too, in terms of the farm system and bringing in the superstars, I think that the guys that you see in the Cardinals organization at the corners right now have helped their attendance.
Oh, yeah. I mean, watching Arenado is worth the price of admission, and Goldschmidt too.
Yeah, but I think they know. I think that ownership knows, GM knows that's the purpose of having those guys there right now. I don't know that because they're there, they're thinking World Series championship. Because of the list that you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that those guys are going to be there when the guys on that other list are getting up there.
True. Well, I think I agree with you to a certain extent. I agree that they're interested in getting fans in the seats. Of course they are. But I think the Cardinals have approached it like we're going to build the best team that we can in a fiscally responsible way. And because we've seen success doing that before, and we've won World Series championships with an 83 win team in 2011. And in 2006, it was very similar. Because it's so random how these things play out, we're just going to continue down that track. But the problem is they haven't seen much postseason success since 2011. They made it to the World Series in 2013, and that's the closest they've come to winning a World Series championship since. And the last 3 seasons, lost in the wild card, lost in the wild card, lost in the wild card, have not advanced past the wild card round.
Yeah, that's painful.
It is painful. In 2019, they did make it to the NLCS, but they got swept by the Washington Nationals, who went on to win the World Series that year. So I think that the Cardinals need to challenge themselves at the very least to think differently, to think, why is this happening? Because you could argue they have just as much talent, if not more talent, than some of those teams that won the World Series. Why is this happening? And what can we do to correct it? Is there a move that we can make to potentially get an X factor player to get us over that hump, right? Yeah. And I think, and I'm going to transition us now to the end of the show sheet and our bold prediction so we can get you out of here.
What about the dictionary segment? Can I pull out my?
You got 10 minutes. I mean,
I know.
Okay, you want to pull out your dictionary?
We might have to expand it to a book segment. I'm going to be reading this one. Sent to me by a Brewers fan of mine, a friend of mine, and look at this.
Oh my God!
That's cool. He was like, "You might want to look through that." And I'm like, "Whoa!" And he told me the story behind that, so that's kind of fun. And then on a future show, we got to talk about this baseball with polyhedral dice. I'm telling you, we're going to get this guy on, and we got to talk about this because this could get me through the winter.
What is that?
This is a book called Dead Ball.
Uh-huh.
And we'll have to save it for a future show. But basically what it is this guy that W.M. Akers is his name. He's a writer. And he loved baseball so much, he wanted to make a game that you could play on your kitchen table that would simulate the game of baseball. And that's what it is. It's by the description, a lightning fast game for one or two players that uses real stats to bring the ballpark to your tabletop. We'll talk more about that down the line.
Okay, but we might have to play a game of that or something.
Yeah.
Do you want on the live stream if it's possible? I don't even know.
Yeah, we could. Yeah.
Do you want me to do the jingle?
Sure. Yeah, the jingles. Oh, do I want you to do the jingle? You got to do the jingle.
All right. Welcome to the Dixon's Baseball Dictionary segment of the show where Mike pulls out his dictionary.
All right. Yeah. There it is. So interesting.
What page are you on? What page?
Well, here's the thing. I thought that I was looking for a specific entry, and I'm kind of surprised not to see it in here. Because who was the guy that played for Boston Red Sox when they won the World Series and broke the curse?
John Lester?
No. The dirt dog. I don't know. Anyway,
what's his name? I think I know who you're talking about. Isn't he on MLB Network or something?
Yes.
I know who you're talking about. I just can't think of his name right now.
Right? Like,
hang it.
Who? Shoot. So anyway, I heard that. No, I was watching Fever Pitch.
Because I know when they broke the curse because it was against the Cardinals.
Yeah. I was watching Fever Pitch. The Jimmy Fallon movie, the baseball movie.
Kevin Millar, that's his name.
I don't think that's right.
Or Jason Varitek.
I don't think that's right.
Oh my God. I think it's Kevin Millar.
I don't think so.
Johnny Damon?
Nope.
Do you want me to read you the entire?
Yes, go
roster?
Down. Let me see if I can.
Sandy Martinez, Doug Mirabelli, Jason Varitek, Mark Bellhorn, Orlando Cabrera, Cesar Crespo, Brian Daubach, Andy Dominic, Nomar Garcia Parra, Ricky Gutierrez, David McCarty, Doug Mitowich, McTenowich, Bill Miller, Pokey Reese.
What a name.
Is that real? Is this a real Ross? Yes, it's a real Ross.
Trot Nixon.
Okay, Trot Nixon.
All right. So anyway,
Gabe Kapler was on that team, manager of the San Francisco Giants right now.
Yeah. So Trot Nixon. So Jimmy Fallon had a shirt on that said something Dirt Dogs, and I was like,
Dirt Dogs.
What is that? Dirt? What's that? And I looked it up, and so Dirt Dog in the Dixon's dictionary here.
Dirt Dogs.
Dirt Dog, and
I'm afraid of what we're gonna find here.
Yeah, it's on page 258, and you should be afraid because I'm kind of disappointed. This is the
dog. Is that dog spelled D-A-W-G?
No, D-O-G.
Okay. All right, I see it. I see why you're disappointed.
Right? Like it says synonym of dirt ball 3, which then you go back to dirt ball. And this is the 3rd edition, and you would think that this would have that it would be updated in here. So I'm going to reach out to Paul Dixon, and I'm going to say, hey, there's information in Wikipedia that outdates your 3rd edition. Maybe the 4th edition is out. I don't know.
Perhaps.
But Dirt Dog, which it tells me to look at Dirt Ball. Mm-hmm. And then I go to Dirt Ball and I look at the 3rd definition. A player who often dirties his uniform with intense hustling. Players who dirty in Sports Illustrated August 2006 wrote, players who dirty their uniforms every game are referred to as dirt balls. But Wikipedia tells me that the term dirt dog may have developed. So it's refers to a scrappy blue collar type of player, right? The origin is unknown, but it may have originated in the Boston Red Sox organization, as it was widely popularized there. In Boston, it was used to describe former right fielder Trot Nixon. Nixon gained great popularity with Red Sox fans for his particular style of play. It considered emblematic of the term for his gritty play, as well as often dirty uniform, ball cap, and pine tar caked helmet. It's not limited to the Red Sox, but it may have been popularized there. The first written documentation of the term, which I'm surprised is not in here, has been cited with former Sox pitcher Paul Quantrill. He was quoted as saying, "If they can keep it close, this pack of dirt dogs will find a way to win." So
you want to definitely get a team full of dirt dogs, and I believe that Brendan Donovan is a dirt dog.
There you go.
I believe I really like that player.
Yeah,
very much so.
I think Nico Horner's a dirt dog.
Yeah, should we have like a dirt dog, like when the season, picks back up? Should we have a dirt dog of the week segment?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. Right. I love that. I love that idea. So there you go. There's the Dixon Baseball Dictionary segment of the show, as the jingle goes.
All right. I'm going to get you out of here, Mike, with a bold prediction for the off season. What do you think your Cubs are going to do?
I think they're going to re-sign Wilson Contreras.
All right. My bold prediction for the Cardinals, they are going to make a big move. I don't know if it's going to be Wilson Contreras, but you're going to see them aggressively attack the catching position. They're going to make a big trade, that they're going to make a big signing. If they're going to do it, that's the position they're going to do it for, because that's the biggest need on the roster, and it's not even close. Get shortstop out of here. We have the future shortstop of the future already in the organization right now, so we don't need that. Just going to clog it up. Don't be surprised if they move off of some prospects that have been in the organization for a while, like Dakota Hudson. Don't be surprised if he's a trade chip for some team. Also, I think very, very strongly, I'm a very big fan of a couple of pitchers in the Cardinals organization right now that I think are going to play a big part in 2023. Zach Thompson, underrated. I think he should be in the starting rotation ahead of some pitchers, potentially Adam Wainwright, but they didn't make that move. They haven't made. We'll see how good Adam Wainwright is at age 41. So that might be a bold prediction. And Andrew Palante, I also think, has a bright future. So the Cardinals have two young pitchers on their roster right now, and Matthew Liberatore could also factor in too. So there's a lot of pitching depth on this roster, but those two guys right there, especially Zach Thompson, I think is going to be a huge factor. He's going to play a huge role in 2023, and I think he's going to earn a starting role in the pitching rotation, because I don't know if Jack Flaherty is dependable at this point. So those are two of my bold predictions.
Yeah, well, two. Wow. I mean, you just waxed on eloquently about 15 players for your bold predictions. That was pretty impressive. The other one that I would say is I don't know that we're bringing Jose Abreu to the Cubs, but I will go with Yuli Gurriel. And next week's show, I want to talk about several things. Sorry about the dog barking in the background here, but the mailman's here. I want to talk about several things. I want to talk about the dead ball. We'll have to talk about the dead ball. And then the other thing on next week's show that I want to talk about is the Houston Astros and an investigation that I believe needs to take place.
All right. For Mike, for myself, thank you for watching the show. Click the like and subscribe button and the alarm bell to be notified of new content. Mike and I will figure out a schedule. Saturday mornings are typically when we go live, so just be on the lookout for that. And until next time, I am going to be nonstop Googling all of those cool Montreal Expos teams in the 90s. You remember those teams, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
With like Randy Johnson and Pedro Martinez. And I'm trying to think of, they had some other, I think wasn't Manny Ramirez an Expo at one point?
Listen,
I'd have to double check.
I by no means mean any disrespect. I just don't know him well enough. You're a co-writer on the football show, Koompa.
Ahan Rungta.
Yeah, I just wasn't going to. I'm sorry. But I'm pretty sure he had an Expos headband.
Yeah, that's what I thought of. And he wasn't even, I don't know if he was alive when the Montreal Expos were around.
Yeah, we need to get him on the show.
I remember going through my baseball cards and seeing like, oh, Expos, cool. Yeah. Expos, like the Expos were a thing when I was a kid. Yeah. But there's no team in Canada anymore.
Yeah.
So, Toronto, Toronto's in Canada.
We need to maybe get him on the show to talk about the origins of that headband. And the other thing for next week's show is we're redoing the room here. We're going to have the unveiling of.
Are you going to get yourself a whiteboard
of the Cubby space? And I am going to get myself a whiteboard.
Oh wow!
And the other thing, there's one other thing that I need to talk about really quick because I'm about out of time. I'm out of time. But listen, how is it just because you're so pale that your face looks like that? Because I got this big shadow I've noticed on my face.
I have lighting over here.
I can face the sun.
Watch what happens. Watch what happens when I turn the lighting off.
You're still pale.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't make a ton of difference. Like I know I'm pale.
All right.
Until next time, go Cardinals. Let's get ourselves
a
catcher.
Cubs.
See you later, everybody. Goodbye. Be good.